so we're going to look a little bit further into this work. So if we look at this first question here, I'm just going to explain the easiest way for you to draw it. So firstly, draw up your number plane. We're going from -4 to 4 on the x-axis and -4 to 4 on the y-axis. So pause the video and just take the time to draw that number plane up. And then after you've done that, we're going to use 3 different colours just so we can see these lines properly. Because if you're looking at it normally, it's probably going to be very confusing where the line's actually gone. So the first one I've got is the black one, and that's the equation y equals x. So what they've done is they've plotted a point 1, 1. So I want you to plot the point 1, 1, and we already have the origin here in the middle. So once you've got those 2 points plotted, I just want you to get your ruler and join straight through those 2 points. And then write y equals x on it. Then I want you to go to another colour, and if we go to the blue, now the blue line has a point on it 1, 3. So plot that point up there, 1, 3. And we're also going to look at the origin, and I want you to get your ruler now and put it on those 2 points and rule straight through. And that has the equation y equals 3x. And the last one you're going to do, the red graph, has a point on it, 4, 1. So plot the point 4, 1. We also have the origin, and just put your ruler against these 2 points and rule straight through with your ruler. And that's the equation y equals 1/4 x. Okay, now the questions here are all based on these 3 lines, so let's see what they're asking us. Now really, your literacy has to be pretty good on this. You've got to read the words really carefully. Don't guess what you think they want. Read it, think about it, and then answer it. So it says, how are these lines similar? So just looking at the 3 lines that we've drawn here, what's going on that's the same about them? Well, remember I told you to draw these lines through the origin, so that's what's similar about them. So we're going to write here, they all pass through the origin. Remember, the origin is the point 0, 0. So they all pass through 0, 0. Okay, the next question says, how are the linear equations similar? Okay, so we're not looking at the line graphs, we're just looking at the equations. So how are these 3 equations similar to each other? Well, they all start with y equals, but most things do. They've all got an x in them. The numbers in front of the x aren't the same, so that's not similar. But what is similar is that none of them have a constant term. Okay, so we're going to write none of them have a constant term. Or if you like, the constant term is actually 0. So you can imagine if we put the constant term on the end of all these, plus 0, plus 0, plus 0, they all have a constant term of 0, but because we're adding nothing, we normally would leave that off, and that's what they've done here. So I'll write them off now. All right, now let's look at the next one. It says, how are the lines different? So we're not talking about the equations now, I'm talking about the actual lines. Now, how are they different? We know they're similar because they all pass through the origin, but how are they different? Well, they're different because they have different gradients. So that's what we're going to write. They have different gradients. Okay, now let's look at the next question. It says, how are the linear equations different? So we're looking at the equations and how are they different? So let's look at these 3 equations. How are they different? Well, the number in front of the x is different, isn't it? So that's what we're going to say. they have different, now what is that number in front of the x called again? It's a coefficient. So they have different coefficients of x. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Which line is the steepest? Okay, which one looks the steepest? It's that one, isn't it? That's the steepest, so it's y equals 3x. But they've got another question here. It also says, what is the coefficient of x in this equation? Coefficient of x is the number in front of x. The number in front of x is 3. So we write the coefficient of x is 3. Equals 3. Okay, next one. Which line is the least steep? Okay, so like the beginner run down at Threadboat. So that's the advanced run, that's intermediate, and this would be the beginner because it's not much slope on it. All right, so y equals a quarter x is the least steep. And what is the coefficient of x in this equation? Well, here it is. The coefficient of x is a quarter. Equals a quarter. Okay. All right, so looking at part G now. How does the size of the coefficient of x, so the size of the coefficient of x, in a linear equation affect the steepness of the line? All right, so think back here. Look at the coefficient of x. 3, this one would be, that would be a 1 in there, wouldn't it? So 3, a 1 and a quarter. How does that number affect how steep the line is? Well, which one was the steepest? It was this one. Let's look at the number in front of the x there. It's 3. That number is bigger than that, bigger than 1, and it's also bigger than a quarter. So the bigger that number, the steeper the line. Okay, so we're going to say the bigger the coefficient of x, the steeper the line. Okay. Now this next question's got nothing to do with lines, so they're trying to get you to have a little bit of an idea on how to graph anything. Okay, so what we're going to do here is draw a graph of y equals x squared. Alright, so they've got a table here and they want you to fill this out. Alright, so we're going to take each point one at a time, but what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to start here because they're a bit tricky. I'm going to start at the 0. So watch what I do. Take x equals 0. We're going to put it into y equals x squared. So if I put the 0 in for x, and work 0 squared out on your calculator, so just remember where the squared key is. Okay, so we're going to press, whoops, turn it on. All right, press the 0, and now the squared button is up the top here, remember? Just here. So I'm going to press that, and there's your 0 squared, press equals, and it's 0. Okay, now when you get that answer, you're going to put that underneath the x equals 0 that we just put in. Alright, so you need to go ahead and just do all these positive numbers first because they're easier. So we're going to do x equals 1, write down y equals x squared, and put in the 1. The calculator will give you a 1 for that, and then you put the 1 in here. Okay, so what we do next, take the next number, x equals 2, write down the equation that we're putting it into, put your 2 in for x, use your calculator, and it will give you a 4. Okay, the next one is x equals 3. So we're going to put that into our equation. So 3 goes in for x, And we end up with a 9 if we use our calculator. So I expect everyone to get those ones right in a test. Now, where it can go wrong is with these negatives, so you need to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. All right, so I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start with the -1 because it's a pretty easy number. Okay, so if I look at x equals -1 and write down my equation for my graph. Now, when you do this, if you write this down like this, you're going to get it wrong. Okay, you will not get the right answer. And it's because of how your calculator works. So if you put that in your calculator, I'll show you what happens. Right, so if you press -1 squared equals, press what equals now, you get -1. And that's wrong. Okay, so the reason it's wrong is because your calculator thinks that whatever you put in underneath the squared is what you want squared. So it thinks you want 1 squared. So it goes, all right, I'll work out 1 squared for you, and it's 1. And then what it does is go, all right, well, that's going to give you a 1. So now I'm just going to write that minus in front of it and give you -1. And it's wrong. So what you say, but that's not what I meant, is telling the calculator, I didn't mean that. I wanted you to get -1, and I wanted that squared. So for your calculator, you must put brackets around that negative number, because then the calculator goes, oh, okay, so you want the -1 and you want it squared. Okay, I can do that for you. All right, so when you put in your calculator, you're going to put it in like this, open bracket, -1, close the bracket. All right, now you've given the base and you say, now I want you to square it. All right, we'll press the squared equals, and it actually gives you 1. It does not give you -1. So we're going to put that underneath our -1 here. Okay, so what are we learning from this? I hope you're learning something, because if you can remember this, it'll help you a lot when you get to year 9. All right, so negative numbers must be put in brackets if you're going to put a power onto it. Okay, so negative numbers must be put in brackets to then have a power. All right, so if we do the next one the same, we take the -2. There's our equation, and we're going to put a negative in, so it has to go in brackets before we square it. And if you use your calculator, it'll give you a 4. Try it now and make sure you get that 4. Okay, next one. Take the -3. Put it in brackets because it's negative. And the calculator will give you a 9. All right, now we're going to plot all these points. So I've started to draw up my number plane because I could see already that my x's are going from -3 to 3. So on my x's, I'm going to go from -3 to 3. So now I'm going to look at the y's we just found out. What's my smallest? My smallest y is a 0, and our biggest y is a 9. So I need to go from 0 to 9 on my y-axis. So I'm going to draw this up now. Now, I don't think I can do it in 1, so I'm going to do it in 2s. Now, you don't have to stop exactly on 9 if you don't want to, and I'm not going to here. I'm going to go up in 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8 and 10. I've gone a bit past the 9, but that's okay. Now we're going to plot our points. So watch what I do. This first point here, let's put your red pen around it, it's -3, 9. Right? So I'm going to go over here, along -3 and up 9. Now if I go up 9, it's going to be halfway through between the 8 and the 10. I'll try and get this right. Okay, next point I'm doing is -2, 4. So along -2, up 4. And it should be about there. Next one is -1, 1. along -1, up 1, which will be halfway there, isn't it? Then I've got 0, 0, and that's a pretty easy one. That's your origin. And then I've got 1, 1, along 1, up 1. 2, 4, along 2, up 4. And last one, 3, 9. Along 3 and up to 9, which is about there. Okay, so what do we do now? We join the dots. Okay, so I'm going to go straight through, no ruler needed, it's a curve, as best as I can. Arrowheads on the end, and that's not a very good drawing, is it? I'm sure yours will be much better. It should look like it's a mirror image. So what this is called is a parabola. So if you throw a ball to somebody, it always forms a parabola, an upside down one. If you look at the Harbour Bridge, that's a parabola, an upside down one. Okay, so there's plenty of examples of where parabolas are used. Your eye, if you look at your eyeball, it's not flat, it's curved. All right, if you look sideways at yourself, have a good close-up look, it's curved. Lenses that we see with have to be curved. If you look at a camera lens is curved. All right, it's all about the reflection of the light involved in that, and you could learn a lot more about that in science. Okay, so we're going to leave that today, and you're going to practice all of this work for home.